Hello?
Sue just walked in.
Oh, okay, great, great.
Okay.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, Doug. Hi, Doug. How are you?
Good, good.
Let's see. Pull it over there so you feel safe.
So, Marianne, you guys couldn't join with the video and get the sound, so you had to call in. Is that right?
First I brought in my computer to try the selectman room because there's a lot more room, but it would not connect to the Wi-Fi, so that's why we're up in this office. But I couldn't get the voice, so I had to call in and use the computer.
Okay.
So it was a project.
Right. Okay, well, let's get going. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the special permit that we voted on for High Hawk Farm out on Daunt Road. And I got the signatures for it from the planning board folks that attended the meeting about the special permit on Friday. I think that was May 22nd, and put a copy in the Dropbox at the town hall, and then didn't hear anything for a few days. And then I was told that there were some issues with it. And I think Ellen Glidden, the town clerk, talked with Jim Baird, and some of these were identified. And Jim had been doing some research on it. And we got a couple of problems with what we did. The first one was that we held the meeting with Zoom, and the state requirements require that the public has to be able to access the meeting. And apparently that's an add-on feature that I didn't know about. And CMRPC got us on Zoom, but I didn't tell them that we needed to have this. Well, I didn't tell them, and we didn't put this out through a publication from the Barre boards. So there was no public access during that meeting, and that was my fault. The second thing was Jim had some concerns about the way the documents were signed. We had our meeting on April 21st where we voted on approving the special permit, which we approved. And then we had a subsequent meeting on May 21st where we voted. That was not a public hearing, but that was just a regular planning board meeting to vote on the conditions in the special permit. And that was approved as well. Now, the issue has to do with the fact that there were two people who weren't on both calls. Kurt Wells called in on April 21st and voted in the affirmative to approve the permit, but he was not available on May 21st. And Susan LaRosa was, and Susan called in, and we voted on the conditions in the special permit. And there seems to be an issue with the fact that it wasn't the same people who did that. And the last issue has to do with the public notice that was posted in the Barre Gazette, and that we did not have the proper number of posts in the Barre Gazette. It's supposed to have 2, and it has to be over a 14-day period or a minimum of 14 days. It can be longer, but we didn't have we had the 14 days, but we didn't have the 2 notices in the paper, the Barre Gazette. So that's a deficiency as well. So Jim, do you have anything you want to add to that or expand on?
I had to unmute myself. I'm sorry. I think you summarized it completely. It's just, I'll blame it on the corona, virus problem that I think screwed up a lot of things.
How so specifically?
How so what?
How did the coronavirus affect these meetings and not getting the everything that Doug just outlined? How did the coronavirus specifically affect those, each one point by point?
Well, I think some of them are pretty obvious as opposed to some that may have nothing to do with the coronavirus. The publications in the paper, that's independent of the Codex 19. That's a statutory requirement. Any hearing by the planning board for a special permit requires 2 publications, the first of which has to be 14 days before the hearing.
Is that her planning board's responsibility?
Well, it's somebody's responsibility. Usually the applicant, my understanding is in Barre, your applicants are given the chore of contacting the paper with the dates that they've been told to select, and they pay the paper accordingly. And
They did that multiple times. This wasn't,
and in
the
the
planning board did this at the other meetings for the planning board.
in some cases, the board itself collects the money and takes care of that. That's from town to town. It varies.
Yeah.
So that's a specific statutory requirement that has nothing to do with the virus.
Mhm.
But-
Okay, and then Doug had 3 points.
Pardon?
Doug had 3 points. He said that there were 3 issues with
Yeah.
the special permit.
Okay.
So you just,
The second
Go
one,
ahead.
I'd say the second one was as a result of the virus, the governor, legislature, et cetera, have allowed town planning boards, et cetera, other committees to deal with special permit issues, but they've imposed a requirement that if it's done on a Zoom or some kind of remote video audio access, the public has to be able to access that and be able to see it, at least be able to see it. In this case, they weren't able to access it because they wouldn't know where it was. Second, they couldn't see it afterwards because it's never been uploaded to the town's website onto BCTV.
With these new standards, has the state, sent any guidelines to the planning board, conservation, any other boards? Because
Oh,
I really
yeah.
haven't seen much guidance coming from the state as to the new protocols.
There's plenty of guidance that's been sent. It's been distributed. The town clerk has been very diligent in distributing it to the selectmen and the town administrator and to the planning board and other boards. And I
okay,
believe,
then who failed on this instance?
I
Is
don't know,
somebody on the planning board or somebody in the town government who failed to post it publicly? Because I understand the Board of Selectmen, they are following all of the open meeting laws through all this COVID stuff. So at somewhere, somebody failed to do their job. And I'm just wondering, Jim, who you were suggesting failed to do their job for this?
well, maybe it'll make you feel better if I point the finger at somebody, but I don't know if that accomplishes anything. The fact is that it didn't happen. In other instances,
How do we ensure that it happens next time
well, that's,
if we don't know who messed up?
I think in this case, we
Can
have,
I interrupt for a
we have,
minute?
go ahead.
When I originally received that application in February, every date was calculated out with the Barre Gazette for your March meeting, which you did not have a quorum for. So whatever goes on after that, I did what I was supposed to do up to that first public hearing. I
So-
followed the requirements for that.
I
2 consecutive weeks in a row with the exact amount of days, and the first meeting was March 17th, not April 21st. So those requirements were followed.
The first meeting in March was appropriately advertised. The problem was there wasn't a quorum at that meeting to conduct any business. That, you can blame that on the people that didn't show up. Or the fear of the virus that was taking place at that time, and the unraveling of some sort of societal norm as a result of edicts from the governor and the legislature and everybody else. In any event, in order to get a meeting zoomed, if you want to use that as a appropriate term, the town administrator has been able to Zoom selectmen meetings and finance committee meetings. You can go on the town's website, BCTV, and you can view meetings that were held, over the last several weeks or months now, maybe. However, the night that Doug was trying to put together the one meeting, the first one, for the hearing, he was not able to make use of the town administrator's Zoom capability and reached out to Central Mass Regional Planning. Hi, Anthony. And Anthony very nicely volunteered or agreed to provide the Zoom feed and the Zoom meeting. There was a Zoom meeting. The problem is it was viewed by only those people who had the password and the access code. No other people were on that meeting, and no copy of that or recording of that visual has been uploaded to the town's BCTV or town website for the public to be able to view it. If you follow the dilemma.
Are we making that same mistake again tonight?
Tonight's not that critical. You're not holding a hearing tonight.
It's not a public hearing tonight. But Ralph,
There's no open meeting laws for a planning board tonight?
in answer to your question, Ralph, the responsibility of not conducting the Zoom meeting and in being able to include the public, that was my mistake for the April 21st meeting. I didn't understand that. Our first meeting in March, Heather Monroe helped us with that. And we did have the link where the public could access the meeting. On April 21st, we did not have that. And that's because I did not ask CMRPC to include that because I didn't know about it. So does that answer your question?
I mean, I guess it does a little bit. But I guess the trouble that I'm having here is someday, Doug, I aspire to be in your chair. At some point in time, I assume that you're going to step down and go about your life. And I plan on being a part of the planning board for quite some time. And it's my vision that I'm going to be the chair of the planning board. Not having been through something like this, I would have to assume that someone is guiding you. I would hope somebody is going to be able to guide me through the legalities of things and that kind of thing. Are you are the chairperson. Are you just supposed to automatically know everything that you're supposed to know? I don't understand how that works. Don't we get guidance from the town that is supposed to hold your hand through the legalities of this? Is it Jim? Is it Mary Ann? I would hope someone is responsible for guiding you and making sure that you don't open the town up to lawsuits.
In answer to your question, it's my responsibility solely as the chairman of the planning board. And I missed this. We received some guidance. Remember, this was all done very quickly because there was a time schedule that we were trying to meet for the applicant. And we were pushing this thing along as fast as we could. The first meeting, we didn't have a quorum, which was unfortunate, but we did for the April 21st meeting. I thought I had everything set up properly, but I missed the part about it's a separate notice that the public can call in on. And that's my responsibility.
Okay.
guess the other question I have is, since we've been having a hard time getting a quorum, now if it's going to be an issue that if the same people that vote on approving the special permit also need to vote on the special conditions, I mean, I figured a quorum was a quorum, and I don't know why all of a sudden it's an issue that we have to have the same quorum. I guess that would be for Attorney Beard, seeing he's the one that's raising that this time.
It just, that alone, if that was the only problem, that existed, there'd probably be sort of an attempt to kind of acknowledge it and forget it. But unfortunately, that's not the only problem. It's one problem stacked on top of a second problem, stacked on top of a third one. And there may be other problems. I can only tell you, if you go looking at something as a procedural sequence, if you look long enough, you'll find another problem probably. But you got
What's your
some
recommendation
you
to
got
rectify these problems then? Are we supposed to be, we're gonna just see if anybody appeals? I mean, what's your recommendation to move forward in a smooth meeting?
my recommendation that I gave to Doug, and I CC'd Marianne, who I understand copied, I thought everybody on the board, was that you schedule and hold another hearing and vote. If it's still under the state's Zoom rules, you have to comply with the Zoom requirements. And not
Another hearing? Is that what you said, Jim? Another hearing? Another
correct.
town hearing?
Well, the one that was held, in my opinion, is defective.
Something's defective, all right. I totally agree there.
Now,
Wow.
I don't find it very funny.
Neither do I.
Neither do I.
Yeah,
Submitted
I would
this
be embarrassed. I think
February-
everyone on the planning board should be absolutely embarrassed at this.
February
crazy.
4th, I submitted this.
And I'm sure, Chris, you and Ron did not anticipate a coronavirus catastrophe, state emergency.
I don't buy, I take that for a little bit, but I don't buy that. February 4th, March 17th, no quorum, planning board not showing up. April 21st, the statement that you guys are working quickly to make this happen. Look at the time frame in between those. That's not working quickly.
Well, you're acting as though someone immediately realized that there'd been some defect, flaw, error, omission, or something each time something happened and recognized that immediately.
So
Somebody-
May 21st, it got voted, the final one. And it got submitted on the Friday. And it's taken you this long to come up with these answers. So this long, May 21st to June 9th. That's not working quickly at all.
Well, let's see, that one was a Friday, right?
The Friday that Doug submitted it to the town clerk. And how many
Okay.
times did my father call? He called you, he called Ellen, he called Doug. How many times?
I have no idea. I know your father's on here, but I did not talk to him. He may have called, but I didn't talk to him.
Yeah, I know. You didn't talk to him. That's what I'm saying. This hasn't been a very quick process.
Well, quick is as quick can do. In this case, it's filed on a Friday when the town hall itself is closed. There's no one in that building until the following Monday to even talk to. It wasn't until Monday or Tuesday I was told that there'd been something attempted to be filed with the town clerk. And at that point, I started to get involved, started to ask questions, made an arrangement to go up and look at what was in the file that had been left in the town clerk's office to see what had happened. And after I'd realized that these omissions slash oversights had occurred, I then advised Doug that we had a problem. I advised Marianne we had a problem. I advised the town clerk we had a problem. I advised the town administrator we had a problem.
And I didn't hear about this until a couple hours ago.
Well,
And I heard it from my father, and I didn't even get an invite. I didn't even get an email saying, come to the Zoom meeting tonight. My father had to share it with me. February 4th, we submitted this.
Chris, when I said we were hurrying through March and April, because we had issues with not having a quorum, which is a different issue than the rest of this, we tried to push this along as quickly as we could. We made 2 visits out to Daunt Road. We made a visit where we had all the people from the planning board there. Everybody was cognizant of what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. And then we made the meeting appointment or the meeting schedule as soon as we could do it. Now, I don't agree with Jim about the signatures. We can't have the same people required to sign a signature for an approval and a special permit. We have people we had someone with a health problem and we had a different person to do it. Now, the minutes from the public hearing on April 21st were sent out to everyone. Susan LaRosa had those minutes and read them. She also came on the sidewalk. So she was, I would argue, she was perfectly qualified to sign the special permit conditions, which was just a regular meeting, not a public hearing. Now, we did miss the 2 notifications for the April 21st meeting. And I'm not sure why that happened.
It's clear. It's clear. Somebody didn't do their job right. It's as simple as that.
Well, the whole thing is made difficult, first by not being able to meet in person. Second, because we didn't pick up on one part of the instructions that were pretty important. And third, you can't visit the Henry Woods building. So that makes this hard.
I understand that there's new requirements because of the COVID-19 open meeting rules. But if we're going to be having these meetings, then where was our guidance and who was in charge of making sure that they're carried out properly? I mean, I appreciate what CMRP is doing, and maybe they weren't fully abreast with what the significance of the meeting was. I mean, did Attorney Beard review protocol, make sure that our meeting was going to be held to standard? Did the new town administrator not give us support? I mean, maybe Marianne would know if we've gotten emails from the state. I don't recall seeing anything coming my way saying that these are the protocols and the steps that we need to follow. And I just think somebody should have been on the ball as far as making sure that they're holding our hand through this process, because I wouldn't know where to look on my own as far as finding the new requirements. And being, an elected official, I think that we deserve this kind of support.
Again, that deficiency for the Zoom meetings is mine. I should have known that, but I didn't. Now, Heather Monroe helped us with the meeting in March, where the link for people, the public, to call in was there. She was unavailable to help us April 21st or May 21st. And that's when I turned to CMRPC and I asked them for help. But I did not ask that the public be included in the meeting because I didn't know about that. So that's the simple truth there. It was my fault and I admit it.
Jim, so Doug outlined 3 issues with this special permit. You pretty candidly said that you chalked it up to COVID. We've gone over 2 of the issues, and you agreed that one of the issues wasn't COVID related, and then you're suggesting that this Zoom meeting one is COVID related. And then what was the third issue, Doug? Could you remind everybody what the third issue
signatures.
was?
The signatures as to the vote.
Oh, the signatures as to the vote. And so you're suggesting that that was COVID related
No,
because the people.
it was
No.
probably, it probably was complicated and exasperated as a result of COVID because you can't meet in person. But it doesn't,
Yeah, but the people who voted for that, one of them in particular has not been a constant at the planning board meetings for, 8 months now or something like that. I think he's been to 3 meetings in 8 months, which is way before COVID started. So I would argue that that is just not COVID related at all.
I don't know what that has to do with signatures.
Are you saying he shouldn't have been included in the public hearing?
No, I'm just suggesting
Yeah, because
that
that would have been
Jim
Mr.
said,
Wells, and we know Mr. Wells has health issues.
yes. Yeah, so
I-
Mr. Wells, he was the one who voted for that, and I'm not suggesting that he shouldn't be here. I believe he should be here whenever he's able to. My point is, you suggested that him not signing on the special terms to the special permit,
It was-
not being okay, and that being COVID related, has nothing to do with COVID because he's only been at a couple of meetings for the past 8 months. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, whether or not he's 100% attendee or attends one meeting every 10 years, he's still one of the people that the board used to meet the statutory requirement that you have 4 members of the planning board to act on a special permit. That night,
Okay,
you needed 4 people that night. You, as the associate, were able to act because there were not 5 regular members on that Zoom meeting. So you were able to act to make it actually 4. And without you or anybody else that night, it would have been an unqualified vote because it would not have satisfied the 4 supermajority requirement.
okay. But your problem with that whole thing is that Kurt was not able to sign the special requirements, correct?
For whatever reason, the night of the vote, you had 4 people. Those are the people that voted in favor of the special permit. The other members of the board that did not participate for whatever reason, and Sue was one, and Frank was the other. In my opinion, they may be able to participate in the discussion of how the vote and special conditions are going to be worded, but they are not the ones that voted for the approval in the first place. And it should be those people that voted that are on the vote to submit it to the town clerk for filing and starting the clock to run. As I said, if that was the only problem, I could say, forget it, or ignore it, or that's not the one that I'm worried about. The two that bother me the most, one is a plain statutory requirement that existed before COVID and exists today, and it'll exist the rest of this year. And that's the 2 publications in the newspaper as to there being a public hearing on a special permit application for the public to know. The additional requirement of doing it by Zoom and having a notice and access for the public is to offset or overcome the fact that you're not meeting in person and people can't come physically to your meeting or watch it on the BCTV if it was being held in the meeting room downstairs. So those 3 issues, my opinion is you got 2 there that are the biggest, and that's one, that the proper notices weren't in the paper. 2, the COVID-19 requirements for a Zoom meeting, in particular for a public hearing, were not met.
I also have a question on the 4-member requirement. We have 5 members on the planning board,
Correct.
so then a majority would be 3 members.
For a special permit, you're required to have 4.
Okay. You know, with conservation, we usually operate at such a low level, we can usually only have 3 members on the board, so.
Well, for most things, the planning board can operate with 3 members. It's for special permits that the state
Special requirement?
incurred or imposed a supermajority as opposed to a regular majority.
Okay.
What's the law when the planning board members don't show up for the meetings?
You don't have a meeting.
Then what's the law? How do I get a special permit if the planning board doesn't show up for the meetings?
You have to wait till they do. Or the time would lapse from the date you filed your application to a statutory date that would give a, and the word isn't automatic, but it's an approval by failure to act.
And that's 90 days, correct?
I'd have to look it up. The trouble
Is
is,
that 90 days from the March meeting?
it would be from the date, I think, that
February 4th.
Chris and Ron filed. But that date was suspended along with everything else by the governor and the legislature during the COVID-19 crisis or state of emergency. So you got rules that were there that would have, in answer to Chris's question, yeah, that would have acted in his favor if a planning board just sits on its behind and doesn't do anything. A normal application for a special permit would, and eventually, as a number of days go by, be approved by default without any action by the planning board. If the planning board does decide to act, they've still got a number of days that they have to do their notice, their filing, their vote and everything. And then they file it with the town clerk. Now, once it's filed with the town clerk, then there's a waiting period again before the town clerk can issue what's called a certificate of no appeal. In this case, once again, the governor and the legislature suspended the running of the 20-day period for a town clerk to issue a certificate of no appeal.
So where can I find the answer to what's the time frame? Is that something that you can find?
It's all been suspended. It's all been suspended.
How could it be suspended? Because we've had a meeting on April 21st and a meeting on May 21st.
The guidance from, let me put it another way. The guidance that came down from another law firm, Copeland and Page, does a lot of communities in the state, and as a semi-service promotion of their own business, they provide opinions and guidance on different matters. In this case, they provided guidance to several towns that they represent who shared their guidance with other towns. And that guidance was shared with Barre, and it was shared with the planning board. In that guidance, the recommendation of Copeland and Page was don't hold public hearings during this coronavirus crisis. In other words, don't do anything. It's so screwed up. They didn't say this, but what they probably were under their breath saying is, it's so screwed up, you're going to have trouble complying with everything. Which is
Then how do I get a permit? If you can't have
Well,
public meetings, they don't want to have public meetings, you need a special permit. You're putting me out of business this year. You're costing the town potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax revenue. How do you think the town people are going to feel about that? When I go out on social media and post this to everybody, that the planning board is not giving us a permit. Or tried to give us a permit, but they screwed it up multiple times.
I think
I
whatever
don't
way.
think you can blame the planning board for everything that's gone wrong. This is not normal times.
I can say that the planning
on
board
social
dragged their
media.
feet multiple times. I got dates, times, how long did it
Could have
take?
put it out on social media. That's just really pretty low.
All right.
I'm just holding you guys accountable.
All right.
You hear me? I'm stepping in. This is the gavel sounding. If we were in person, I'd be pounding the gavel. This is not helping us get anywhere. Okay?
If I don't have a special permit, I am out of business this year. And by the sounds, this is what is gonna happen.
You took the risk of going ahead with this without it.
I 100% did.
You took
I
the risk.
did.
And we talked
I get it.
We talked about that at one of the meetings in the planning board.
Yeah, and I get it. I took the risk.
You're taking the risk.
I didn't think after February 4th to today's date, it would take this long to get this.
Yeah, well, neither did I. All right, let's tone this down a little bit. Let's figure out how we're gonna move this thing forward. That's what we're here for, isn't that right?
Yes,
Chairman,
Yeah, Ralph?
I'm just curious, how many more times can the planning board mess this up moving forward? Do we have like a number, like 3 strikes we're out, or we can keep doing this 18 times or something? Like, is there a number?
I'll have a recommendation. Call your state legislator and ask them that question, and then why don't you share that with us? Okay? I don't think that's very helpful, Ralph.
I'm just curious. I
Okay.
want to know what the baseline is.
Well,
If I could make an observation, and it would not give Ralph a detailed absolute date, but time eventually works in favor of the applicant if no action is taken by the planning board. In this case, eventually the coronavirus state of emergency is going to be lifted. And as it's lifted, then all these time frames and dates start to run. The calendars start to run. That doesn't make Chris and Ron maybe very happy, but it's an answer to your question, Ralph. What happens and when? I can't give you that date because we don't have a date when they're going to lift the emergency.
I
But
don't think that's an acceptable route to go anyways, to just say that we're gonna hope something eventually happens.
that wasn't my suggestion, though.
Rules are, we need to have somebody in charge that can, help us navigate them. And we need to have meetings and have them be, fulfill the purpose of the meeting.
All right, now, I would always say that I think in the beginning, Doug, in summarizing my input to the planning board, gave you my recommendation at the end of that, which was that at tonight's meeting, tonight, you pick a date, pick the dates that the publications can be done, hold a hearing, and have a vote that night. Hopefully, you'll have 4 people show up.
Now, what's the alternative of just running on the permit that we approved?
The permit that you signed is no good.
Says who?
And I can't put it any clearer than that.
So the state would kick that back and they would not be approved by the state? Who's gonna say that it's no good?
Who's going to say it's no good?
Is this a risk they would take that the state would not accept it? If we're saying it's good, we're the authority of issuing the special permit, we approve the special permit. So is the state not gonna accept our special permit? Who's gonna kick it back, I guess is my question.
Well, I don't know how carefully the CCC reviews these things. I have no idea. That I don't have an answer for you because I don't know what they do.
Would it be possible for them to review with the Cannabis Control Commission, explain the situation we had with the town, get a prior approval? Because this seems nuts to start over on the process. I mean, this is just because of a lack of planning that we're all wasting our time here. And I mean, maybe you can get some guidance from the Cannabis Control Commission that maybe they would approve this and just have the omissions noted. I mean, there's got to be a better way. I mean, otherwise, yeah, then we'll just have to start over. But that just seems insane.
I'm not going to be snarky. So from my experience with the CCC, I've been able to watch 5 different people go through all of the different CCC stuff. You're checking a box and you give them the special permit. They don't go back and question the town as to, did the town fulfill all of its duties to issue the special permit? All they care about is they have this thing with the signatures and the stamp. So just to answer Jim's question, it's been my experience that all they care about is you're checking that box.
Well, the only thing is, when you read the state regulations, which are very specific about the number of days of notice, the two postings in the local newspaper, we're deficient in that right now today. The second thing is, for the Zoom meetings, we did not have a notice in there where the public could call in and be part of the meeting. So that's deficient too. My concern is those deficiencies would give someone, I think, reasonable grounds to appeal the permit once it's accepted. It has not been accepted by the town clerk as we speak. I think that waiting on the state to lift these requirements about the COVID-19, we don't know when that's going to happen. I think doing that and then hoping that we could go to the CCC and convince them that everything is okay, I'm not sure that's the best route forward. I mean, we can try that, but I think maybe we ought to try a different route forward, which is holding another public hearing and voting on this.
Doug, are there any other options? Is that the only option that we have?
It's the only option I can think of.
Well, I think Ralph gave you another one in reality by the sit and wait and do nothing option, but that carries with it an undetermined amount of time, which has language that says the time for the appeal period to start running for the town clerk is 45 days after the emergency is lifted. So, I mean, that doesn't give me much a warm and cozy feeling about that date either, which could be off into who knows when.
Just to be clear, it's never, ever my position to sit and wait on anything. I'm a man of action. I don't like to sit and wait.
I think you just, I don't know if you saw it. Matt just pointed out 3 weeks is not a long time to wait. But I think it's more than 3 weeks. I think Mary Ann made a calculation today about when the hearing could be, because you got to get the two publications in the paper. The first publication can't be done this week because the Barre Gazette has already shut down accepting legals for this week. They have to wait till next week. So next week would be the first week that it could be published in the paper. And then you run 14 days from next week's paper date to get your hearing. And I think Mary Ann, I think she's still there. I think she calculated a date
Here.
around
Yeah,
July.
I calculated July 7th.
Yeah.
Well, hold on a minute. If we get this in the paper, in the Barre Gazette next week, they publish the paper on Thursday. That would be June 18th. The second notification in the paper would be June 25th. Now it's supposed to be, it has to be a minimum of 14 days from the first notification to the public hearing.
Correct.
So 14 days would be July 2nd, I think. Wednesday, Thursday.
July 3rd, which is a Friday,
Yeah, July 3rd. That would be 14 days.
right? And that next Tuesday, that amount isn't going to change anything.
I see.
For the
But-
for the couple days we're waiting to get to the one I said, that's not going to change anything.
So the 14 days, it has to be more than 14 days, is that right?
At least. I think the language is at least. No
Okay.
less than.
Okay. All right, so the
Now, your math, I hadn't looked at a calendar, but your math is probably right. You could probably squeeze it and get it in on July 3rd. It's a Friday night of the 4th of July weekend. So that would be the board's decision to decide that they were going to do something like this on the 4th of July weekend, Friday night. But, you know, that's,
Well, it makes no difference because July 3rd is a Friday and the town office is closed. You can't submit it to the town clerk on that date anyway.
you don't have to submit it that day. You don't have to submit it the day it's voted.
Well, but the 20-day appeal process starts when the town clerk stamps it in.
That would be at the latest, it would be the following, either Monday or Tuesday,
Hey,
depending on whether offices are closed on that, I'm getting all kinds of activity here.
this is Joshua Smith. Jim.
Hello?
Oh, if I could interrupt you guys,
Yeah, just a
sorry.
second.
Your meeting notice on My Town Government doesn't have the Zoom information. Therefore, this is not a legal open meeting.
Great.
Still?
I don't know what you mean about still. You had to put the Zoom information into the agenda at least 48 hours prior to the meeting, or it's not legal under the open meeting law. So I would recommend that you don't have this meeting because it's not legally posted.
We're doing all sorts of stuff that's not correct, so.
Remember, we're putting
Have
plants in the
somebody-
ground.
Do we have
Every
somebody
day that goes by
on the-
is another day to not put a plant in the ground, which costs the town tens of thousands of thousands of dollars.
Sorry, guys. I'm just dropping by to let you know that someone pointed out on Facebook, hey, here's the link to this meeting. I went and looked at the link to the meeting, and there's two big problems with it. There's no Zoom, and your agenda doesn't actually say what you're going to talk about. So Jim's here. I'm sure he'd be happy to explain the open meeting law to you, but I'm going to drop off. But this is not a legal meeting that you're having right now.
Goodbye, Josh. Thank you very much for your wonderful input.
Thank you, Jim.
So anyway. Obviously some people were able to figure out how to get into this meeting, so it must be some notices someplace. But maybe they're not
I
done.
posted it on Facebook. And I tried to get everybody I could to come to this meeting.
Yeah.
I think everybody needs to start being a part of their community and being a part of the planning board meeting so we can hold people accountable. Because without holding people accountable, nothing is going to change. I asked who to point the finger to, Doug, not so that I could be mad at you, just so that maybe I could offer you some assistance. Hey, Doug, do you need help remembering something? Can I help you do your calendar? Like, I don't know. If someone is failing at their job, then they need a chance and an opportunity to succeed. I don't want to point a finger and laugh and go, ha ha, you screwed up. That's not who I am. I was pissed off at the planning board for months. That's why I want to join the planning board. I want to help. Use me. I can help. If you need help figuring stuff out, ask me. Let me help. I mean, someone has to do something. Everybody else is not doing a damn thing, apparently. Let's get this thing straightened out. Let's fix it. I live in this town, don't you guys? It's really frustrating. My apologies for going off.
No comment. Well, I wonder if somebody else is going to call in and help us out.
You used the word help.
Well,
That wasn't necessarily help.
we're not
Right.
voting on anything. We're not making any decisions.
The only thing you need to do is to decide if you're going to hold a public hearing, what date it's going to be held. That would be the only thing I'd suggest you do tonight. I'd get that done and get Mary Ann to do the postings in the newspaper and make sure that that meeting date has the appropriate notice on the town website, the appropriate notice to the residents and in the paper, and go from there to vote that at that hearing and go from there. I can't get as marvelous as the idea of the project making, as Chris has said, millions of dollars for the town. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is whether you've done it right.
Well, I'm up for setting a date and giving Mary Ann instructions to make those posts. So what does the rest of the planning board think about that?
Yeah, I say we move as quickly as possible to fix the errors that we made. I mean, we need to get this resolved, and whatever days we can do it.
And
make
I
sure
think,
we get it
I
right.
think you still have online, you have 3 members, I believe. Because Sue's on, I think, isn't she?
No, Frank is with Mary Ann.
Sue's here too.
Okay, so you got Frank and Sue.
Yeah,
Okay, so you got 4 of your regular members, and you got Ralph as an alternate.
yep.
If the chairman designated the alternate to be able to act in the absence of the 5th member, that would give you 5 people to vote.
But if this isn't a legitimate meeting, then what can we vote on?
Why?
My suggestion would be you vote and cure that problem of it being a improperly posted meeting at the next real good posted meeting you have, and that should satisfy any open meeting law violations.
I move that we make
Okay, do I hear a motion?
I move that we make a motion to, July 7th, 2020,
7 p.m.
7 p.m. meeting.
The hearing.
Is there a second?
A public hearing.
Public hearing.
Frank seconded.
Okay, any
All in favor?
You need to do it by a roll call vote, Doug.
All right,
Oh, okay.
we're gonna do a roll call vote for the
Okay.
motion to have a public hearing on July 7th. Floyd,
Yeah, I vote in favor.
That's him.
Susan,
Yes.
Frank?
Yeah.
Ralph?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we have a yes vote on that. Okay, I've got something else I wanted to talk to the planning board about since we're all here. As you can see by this discussion, the Zoom meetings have been difficult to satisfy all the requirements. Also, some of the work that we do, when somebody comes in with an A&R and they've got a drawing and they've got a complicated issue where they want to divide up a piece of property, I don't see how we could do that through a Zoom meeting. Now, I know that there are some committees in town that have met in person. They met at the senior center. They put tables out 6 feet apart, and everybody sat around the periphery of the room, which was plenty of room, and they had their meeting. Now, I think that there's a way to do that and include the public by posting a number where the public can call in and they can hear the meeting when it's going on. Now, I will check that with Heather Monroe and make sure that that's the case and that we do that properly. But I would like to know how everyone feels about meeting in person in those kind of situations, in that kind of situation, and practicing social distancing and masks and all the rest of it. So tell me what you think. I would prefer doing that than to try to do another Zoom meeting.
Me too. I'm in favor of meeting and social distancing, definitely.
Yeah.
Would that
I
facility
agree
meet all
too.
the requirements as far as
That's-
recording and allowing public in?
Say that again, Floyd, I couldn't hear you.
Would that meet all the requirements? I know at the Henry Woods building, they have recording for the Barre access channel, also allowing the public in. So would all those criteria be able to be met there?
You gotta limit them.
My understanding, when the committee that was formed to look for a new town administrator, when they met, they had a setup, and I'm not sure exactly how it was done, where the public could call in. And my understanding was that meeting met the requirements. Now, obviously, we'll need to check on that.
Okay, do you see Matt Urban's notices that have been popping up?
I
It
didn't
says
see that
legally
last one.
we can be meeting, social distancing, and I think he said something about using some kind of, let us know again, Matt. Maybe videoing it. I don't know where he went.
All right, can you hear me?
Oh, hey, Matt.
Yes.
There he is.
All right, so I'm sorry, I know it's your board, so I'm trying to just use chat and not try to override things, but the TA search committee did use the senior center because we have enough tables where all the members could literally be almost 15 feet apart if they wanted. And they had a setup where they had a camera or something set up where they could actually participate, where the whole room could be heard via Zoom in a separate camera watching the whole room, yet they could be in person, but the general public could still kind of try to participate via Zoom. Most of it was executive session, so it was more like Board of Selectmen via Zoom with the TA search committee actually all laid out in the senior center. But the same general concept could work where whoever's hosting at the senior center would be the one kind of paying attention to comments that might come in from the general public to make sure that you're actually listening or answering to any general public comments. But I do believe Richard C. Stevens, obviously the younger Mr. Stevens, was the chairman of that. And I think if you're interested, he would be more than willing to explain to you how he made that work.
Okay. Now, we'll need some help with this. My understanding is Heather Monroe is done at the end of June. Is that right, Matt?
Yes, it is. And we will definitely be reaching out to Janet to see if we can continue support with CMRPC for some of these remote meeting requests. We're kind of in a weird spot. It's very similar to what you're talking about with the public notice not going in the papers timely. When we did our advertisement for a position, we had conflict with the job description, and so we've got to kind of re-advertise. So it's not as easy for us. So I don't expect us to easily fill Heather's role when she finishes June 30th. So we will see what CMRPC can help us with on at least the meeting hosting. And in the meantime, we've got other things that we'll be talking about in a meeting tomorrow with the Board of Selectmen to try to figure out details on that. But you are correct. Heather is technically done June 30th, and we may be seeing how much CMRPC can help us until we can get either an interim or a final town administrator to fill that role.
I am willing to help, and I'm sure, when it comes to, Janet would probably approve as well, to be able to help facilitate those meetings. And whether that be me in person, handling Zoom with the comments from the public, the general public, or me being there or not being there, and handling the comments from the general public. I could do it either way. I'll probably come to Barry and handle that if that works for you. Obviously, this is completely up to, everyone here.
Anthony,
Yes.
I have it's sort of a multi-part question, but it all comes down to the same issue. There were 2 meetings of the planning board that you already did Zoom. And it's my understanding that those could be uploaded to the town's website with some coordination, with some numbers and stuff with the town's IT guy.
It can absolutely be. I have the download. I wasn't aware that was needed. I assumed that was the minutes were sufficient. That might have been my fault. But the downloads are absolutely possible and doable. All I need is to know where to send them to.
Okay. In talking with Heather earlier today, she said with coordination between either you and she or someone else and the IT guy, that could be done. And I assume that this meeting tonight could also be done the same way, so it would show up.
It absolutely would, yes.
So that would help solve, though it doesn't cure past deficiencies, it at least puts us in the right direction to have a publicly accessible record of what's been happening. And
Yep.
if we just make sure that you and Doug, watch it and make sure that's done for that meeting in July. So it's appropriately advertised in the paper and appropriately noticed that it's going to be a Zoom and it's also available. At least we wouldn't be tripping over ourselves again in July.
Okay, well, Anthony, put July 7th on your calendar, okay? And I'll send you,
Hope you're available.
yeah, I'll send you.
Yes.
And I want to be clear about something. The problems we had with the meeting access, none of the blame for that belongs to CMRPC. CMRPC did exactly what I asked them to do, and they did a good job of it. The problem is I did not know to ask about the public access, and so that did not happen. So I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Okay, if there are any more comments, let's hear them. If not, this is an illegal meeting itself, thanks to Josh Smith's direction. So I
Yeah,
guess,
thank Josh for that input.
yeah, so I guess we can bring this to an end. Any comments?
I got one, because in all this stuff that I was looking through, trying to figure out what had happened and sort of putting a label on what didn't happen or what happened in a way that it shouldn't have happened, I came across a document that came from the CCC, and the document it's like a checklist sort of like document, but it's like in a almost a letter format. And it checks off things about Chris and Ron's project as far as where it is, how much has been done, what's happening, who's involved, all the kind of questions that the CCC has in their checklist. And one of them was that the commission, and I'll quote, "The commission received a municipal response from the municipality on March 18, 2020, stating that applicant was in compliance with all local ordinances or bylaws." And as I think we all can see, as of March 18th, that would have been impossible because the board hadn't even met to vote, even in the meeting that was not done properly. So I understand that maybe that was done in error by the selectmen. Matt would know better than anyone. So that anyway, the CCC is sitting there, Chris and Ron, with a document that says everything's happy in Barre. So they have in their status that they recommend provisional license.
No, there's more to that. There's more to that. You're making that sound way different than it is. There's clearly, hold on, let me find it. So after the provisional license, so after we got the provisional license, then I had to submit the architectural plan review request form. In that architectural plan review request form, it says copies of all applicable special permits. So I couldn't get this until I had a provisional license. The provisional license was given to us because Matt signed off on that. I couldn't get to the next step without that. So now that we have a provisional license, now I need to submit the special permits. So in that the architectural review submittal to the CCC, in that, I put High Hawk Farm has been approved by the town of Barre Planning Board for a special permit on April 21st. However, due to delays from the COVID-19 pandemic, they have not provided us a copy with it yet. We anticipate having a copy by May 26th. Since then, I've gotten an email from Tim Barre from the CCC stating, after I submitted that, saying, please forward the special permit as soon as possible. If some form of a draft ruling with conditions exist, please submit that in the meantime. So I couldn't have got to where we are now without what Matt signed. So I think you're stating that incorrectly.
I apologize if it was incorrect. It was just that it jumped out at me that they'd gotten something from the town that said everything had been done, which in fact, there's 2 steps in the town, as you know. There's a planning board special permit.
Point, but I couldn't get to that next step without that.
That seems like they put a barrier up that doesn't make sense. But in any event, there's 2 steps in the town. There's the planning board special permit, and then there's the board of selectmen does their general bylaw license. It's sort of the final step.
That's correct. And I have submitted everything to the select board that's required in the bylaw.
Right. Okay. So
And the Board of Health.
I would say what you seem to need, which I think you could be provided with, and I'd be willing to work with Doug and anyone else on the planning board to word it. I'd be willing to prepare language for how the special permit would be worded, assuming that the people on the planning board that are present on the 7th of July vote in favor. I don't see why they wouldn't, but I'd be willing to prepare that. So you said they need a rough draft.
That was, well, that's the rough draft to do the architectural review. I don't believe that I can get a final license from the CCC.
Probably not. Probably not. You'll probably have to wait till after July 7th to get your final license.
Yeah, it's going to put us into August, which puts us into not planting anything this year.
I thought you were running the risk and were, because you
I
went
did.
ahead.
I did 100% took a risk, and I thought it was going to be the CCC that prevented me. I didn't
Yeah,
think that I'd be getting the planning board screwing me from not being able to do this.
Well, I don't think we should use the word screwing you. I think some things happened that didn't need to happen the way they happened, and some things happened, but no one was out to screw you. I don't think there's anybody.
I thought a February 4th submittal would be plenty of time to get this done.
Well, it would have been. Can you tell me how come we had the coronavirus? I mean, I don't think there's anybody in Barre that planned that.
That's irrelevant. The time, the delays, the meetings, how many times did I go? How many times did my father call Doug? How many times did he try to call you just recently?
I only know
I'll
one.
get him for you if you want to know. I mean, we could check his records. I could check the cell
Yeah.
record.
I only know of one time your father tried to call me in the last 2 weeks, and it showed up on my caller ID when I came back. That's the only time I know of.
Well, dealing with the past is the past, but in the present, right now, we're still not following the requirements. I mean, that's what concerns me, is that we screwed up in the past, we're trying to make it right, but we're screwing up right now by having another illegal meeting. So whatever we need to do to make sure that all the notices are given, the information is provided where people can get to our next meeting. I mean, we do not need to screw this up again. This is kind of crazy. So, I mean, I don't know who we need to put in charge, what kind of assistance we need to get from the state, but we need to make sure we don't mess this up again.
If there's anything I can do to help, someone just has to tell me what to do.
All right, anybody have anything else to say? All right, let's have a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Anthony.